Welcome back to another episode of the Pax What She Said podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Maggie Loney, joined as always by Perry Goldstein. The big one this week, one that we have had circled on the calendar for a very long time. The Packers traveling on the road to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Perry, is there anything noteworthy about this game? Any familiar faces potentially? Just anything?
No, it's a very unfamiliar opponent, right? AFC North, they play each other every 4 years. No, we're just kidding. Obviously, it's a reunion between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Notably, not a revenge game, just a reunion. And it's going to be a really good one. It's going to be a really exciting game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really curious what the vibes would have been had it been in Green Bay. Just because, the homecoming of it all, I think would have been a different storyline.
Yeah.
But, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers was hurt when the Packers played the Jets a couple years ago, so that it didn't happen. Or no, it was the seeding that shook out the way it was. So the Packers ended up not playing the Jets when we thought that they were going to. So they missed an opportunity there. Two ships passing in the night. And now Aaron Rodgers is a Steeler, and that ship is docking in Pittsburgh, and the Packers are going to be there. Some interesting narratives with this one, right? If Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers win, he will become the fifth quarterback in history to defeat all 32 teams. The Packers are the last one on his list. He has said that he is likely retiring at the end of the season, right? So probably not going to stick around another 4 years for a second crack at it unless it's like a Super Bowl, which would be insane. We'll kick that can down the road, talk about that if it happens, but probably his only shot at that. On the Packers side of things, the Packers have not won in Pittsburgh since like 1970. Bart Starr.
True?
Yeah, Bart Starr was the last quarterback to win in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
So would be kind of wild. Aaron Rodgers couldn't do it. So it would be kind of weird if Jordan Love, comes in and does it.
Yeah.
I remember vividly the 2017 Brett Hundley game where he almost pulled it off when Aaron
I
Rodgers
remember
had the
that
broken
game.
collarbone. Yeah.
Yes. That was actually a crazy game.
That was
He
a good
played
game.
out of his mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Steelers are kind of like a weird opponent, right? And I think anytime you have familiarity from like a Super Bowl perspective, there's a lot of memories that flood back.
Yeah.
But the Steelers have always kind of felt like a Packers-esque franchise in the AFC, blue collar city, really rabid fans that travel really well. So should be a really fun matchup on Sunday between two really good fan bases and two just really good football teams.
Yeah. Two very, very good defenses. It'll be interesting to see how Aaron plays, right, against this Packers defense. But like DK Metcalf is on this team, which I keep forgetting, and they have like a pretty decent run game with Jalen Warren. So it's going to be a really fun game. Even from if you have no relationship to either of these two teams, I think from just like a purely like football perspective, just a fun matchup. And obviously not surprised they put it on Sunday Night Football, but Pittsburgh I think is always a fun game under the lights.
Yeah, and even when the Steelers are quote unquote like bad, not good, they still are in the wild card contention, right? Like Mike Tomlin always has that team prepared and ready to play. Has never had a losing season as a head coach. Like the Steelers are right now in the front of that division. And we know the Packers have the Ravens down the line in December. They lost to the Browns, beat the Bengals. So the AFC North is tough. Like that's kind of one of those like black and blue divisions that they're known for. So I think it's going to be one of the bigger tests that this Packers team has faced so far this season for sure.
It's so funny because if you had asked me before the season started who would be winning the AFC North this season, there's no way that my answer was going to be the Steelers.
Right.
But now the Bengals are without Joe Burrow and the Ravens have been without Lamar, but even, despite that, are having the definition of the season from hell. So the Steelers have kind of taken their opportunity and like really, really run with it. So I think something like catastrophic would have to happen for them not to be at least having a home game in the wild card round in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, which is so wild to think about. Like we talked about the talent level last year just with the Jets and what a guy like Aaron Rodgers could do to elevate that offense. And then, looking for opportunities, he comes to Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf is there. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not sure, like Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator, like what is this offense going to look like? Is it going to be the style of offense that Aaron Rodgers likes to run? So maybe that is a decent place to start here.
Hmm.
Before we shift into the Packers offense, it's just what does this Pittsburgh offense bring to the table, and how can the Packers defense stack up against them? They are 11th in points for right now. They're averaging 25 points per game. They are second in passing touchdowns,
Wow.
19th in yards, 29th in passing attempts. So not throwing the ball a ton, but second in passing touchdowns. So still putting up some big numbers. And then they are 26th in rushing yards, 24th in rushing touchdowns. So certainly a disparity there. 8th on third down offense, 30th in fourth down offense, and 4th in red zone offense.
That's all over the place,
It
man.
really is.
Well, basically, they're a really great passing team and struggling against the run, but they're still putting up points because probably Aaron and DK have a good deep ball.
Yeah, Rodgers has 14 touchdowns, 5 picks so far this season, 1,270 yards, 68.6% completion percentage. So good numbers for him, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 14 touchdowns through 7 weeks.
Yeah.
To a game. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, like, it really sounds like, I mean, the Packers have been excellent against the run this season, so it should be another game where they're able to stifle the run. And if you listen to our recap show on the Cardinals, we were talking about how maybe that actually has been like not very favorable for this Packers defense, given the weaknesses in their secondary. So they make teams one-dimensional, and then they can't stop the pass. So DK Metcalf definitely scares me in this game for sure. Just he has not just the skill mismatch, but the size mismatch against these Packers DBs. I am very curious to see if Halfley makes any adjustments to the way he plays in the secondary, given what we've seen the last 2-ish weeks. But I'm positive that connection, Rodgers to Metcalf, is going to get some this weekend, and I won't be surprised if at the end of the day, DK has some pretty big numbers.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of inevitable at this point. Like, he is going to get his, and it'll just be kind of how the Packers can mitigate that. But even beyond DK, I think one of my concerns is the way that the Packers have kind of struggled this season against tight ends, like giving up a lot of chunk plays and big opportunities to tight ends. And the Steelers,
Freiermuth.
right? They have Pat Freiermuth, they have Darnell Washington, they have Jonnu Smith. Like, if they just have a very nice trio. Pat Freiermuth, obviously, kind of the head of that. But if you take him out of the equation, then you still have to deal with Washington and Smith, which doesn't make things easier. Obviously, all very big-bodied tight ends as well. Like Darnell Washington being 6'5" is just bananas. Or 6'7", I think, actually. So, Jonnu Smith has 2 touchdowns this season. Darnell Washington, I think, got his first one last week. But yeah, it's Metcalf, and then it's those huge tight ends. So I think the size disparity, to your point, is going to be really challenging, and we need those inside linebackers to press and to challenge those tight ends and not make it easy. Because I think if Rodgers can, just hang in there and pick apart the soft spots in the middle of the defense, it's going to be a long day.
I agree with you. I am glad you mentioned Rodgers hanging in there, because I do think that if this Packers pass rush can play the way it has been, which is really reducing the time that quarterbacks have to get the ball out, they're going to make his day pretty difficult. He's not mobile anymore, right? We know that. Neither is Dak, but Dak got his time to throw down to the point where the pass rush didn't even matter. And we know that Rodgers, in his quick game, fully has the capability to do that when he's protected well. And we've seen it this season, Rodgers and hurry up with this Pittsburgh offense. So I anticipate that, he's smart enough to know that's the only way he's going to beat both Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary screaming off the edge. So I think they need to be prepared for that, for Rodgers to be getting the ball out with under 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, and I think, credit to that Steelers offensive line. There are certainly gaps in that line, right? Where there's certainly more talented players at different spots of the line. I think the interior right now has been playing better than the tackles have been playing this season. But Aaron Rodgers has 9 sacks so far.
Mm.
And I was trying to pull up the data. I think it's like he's like 27th in the league right now.
Hmm.
Down with like Sam Darnold hasn't taken a ton either. Jordan Love has taken 10 sacks. So not a ton of sacks given up by either of these offensive line, despite having their fair share of struggles,
Yeah.
respectively for both teams. So I think that will certainly go into this. To your point, yeah, if they can bring heat against Rodgers, he is certainly not as mobile as some of the quarterbacks they've seen, and his ability to evade that is going to be tricky.
Tricky, but also he has the capability to get the ball out really quickly as long as things are open for him down
And
the
and
field.
And if there's one thing that Aaron Rodgers is good at, it's knowing when to throw the ball away, right? Like he's not going to be the quarterback that's going to take some of those silly sacks for loss of yardage.
Oh, it's so funny you say that because I was just thinking, like, I don't know that sacks are actually the stat that I would look at in this
Mhm.
game because Rodgers can evade a sack, but I would be looking at pressures, right? And his time to throw. So, like, if they're really, really pressuring him and it's making him, not have to get the ball out quickly and not as accurately, or if they're trying to do like something really like long and developed down the field and he doesn't have time to like get set, that's really where we're going to start to see the Green Bay defense like mess up the rhythm and the tempo of the Steelers offense and like really get to Rodgers, cuz I don't think see this being like, oh yeah, they're sacking Rodgers like 6 times in this game. But they can impact this offense still, even if they're not bringing him down by just like throwing off his timing.
Yeah, and I know that we don't like place bets on this show, but I would just really love your thoughts on whether or not you think Aaron Rodgers is going to catch this Packers defense with 12 men on the field.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's not something this defense has happened to them yet, but that
Right.
is his specialty. That is his specialty, which he has passed on to Jordan, as we've seen. I'm more expecting the offsides free play,
Yeah.
which scares me more. Um,
Honestly, yeah.
but maybe we can say it'll be one of those.
One of the two.
Oh
Yeah, I think
man,
that's
it's
fair.
gonna be really fun watching him again. Um, Especially because I think he looks so much healthier
Mhm.
and better than he did last season with the Jets. He also has just a much better situation in Pittsburgh. Um, Anything else on Rodgers before we switch gears?
No, I think just to like put a bow on it, I'm sure people have heard sound bites and seen clips from, he spoke with the Green Bay media today. Um, and just kind of the overarching theme was that like this is not a revenge game. Like,
Mhm.
and I think he was gonna say that regardless, right? Like he wasn't gonna come out and be like,
Yeah,
I
fuck this
hate this
team.
team. Yeah. See, I was not gonna say it because now we have to put an explicit tag on the YouTube, Perry. But
Whatever.
exactly. He wasn't gonna come out and say that, right? But to say like he has such fond memories and he basically grew up in Green Bay, and to hear all of the stories from Packers. Keyshawn Nixon had a fun one. Jordan Love saying that they still text, and Aaron Rodgers still like gives him advice. They check in and congratulate each other after wins. Like that is very cool. Like I think it will be a very nice showing for Green Bay, and I think the fans will appreciate him too, right? Like of course they want to win this game, but I don't think there's any type of like animosity. And you can tell like Matt LaFleur is joking around about it, calling him old, and his
They're gonna
mobility.
have they're gonna have a great hug on the field.
Oh yeah.
And Matt, I'm expecting Rodgers to pick Matt up. I don't know why. That's my vision of it. But no, I love the story about Rodgers imposing quiet fines on Jordan his rookie season. He like because he wanted him to speak up in meetings. And his whole thought process was like when I was a rookie, I was afraid to speak and I was afraid to say something stupid and I was afraid to be wrong. And I didn't want Jordan to feel that way. So it was like kind of a joke of like, if you don't speak in this meeting, like you're getting a quiet fine. And it also ended up just being this very good, like lifelong kind of lesson around like leadership and like
Mhm.
being able to be a more vocal leader. I thought that was a fun one.
Yeah, definitely worth going back and listening to those conversations because this is, unless is a Super Bowl. Like, this is probably the one and only time that Aaron Rodgers is going to play the Packers and then likely will retire. So kind of a fun way to see this come to an end. And of course, it has to be on Sunday Night Football too. There was no other way to do
No,
this, right?
no.
In prime time. So let's shift then, because we know that Aaron Rodgers is only going to be on the field for half of the game, and talk about his protege, Jordan Love, and what that offense needs to do against the Steelers defense.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts here. The Steelers are very healthy. If you look at their injury report, the only guys down there that are do not participate are just vet rest for Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. So you're getting an extremely healthy team. There's no help coming. Everyone is playing. Packers obviously not so much. Devontae Wyatt is practicing in, but probably not going to play. And then most notably, Christian Watson has said that he is expecting, his plan is to play. Now, don't get too excited. Definitely going to be in a snap count. However, I think that's a really fun wrinkle for the Packers to have in their back pocket, because nobody really knows what Christian's going to do, how much he's going to do, how they're going to use him, etc. So kind of like that as a wild card for this Packers offense. Otherwise, this is going to be I think this game goes as Josh Jacobs goes.
Yeah.
If Josh Jacobs can get any semblance of a run game going against the Steelers front, I think we're going to have a fun game of football. If this Steelers front, I mean, this is two excellent defensive fronts going up against each other's offenses. And it's just like one of them is going to give at some point. One of them is either going to completely dominate in the trenches and ruin the other offense's day, or one of these offenses is going to be able to find something to pick apart. So I'm hoping that it's Josh Jacobs getting some level of run game going so that the Packers offense can kind of open up. Because if this becomes a bit of a shootout, I definitely start to worry.
I'm glad you said that, because I was just going to ask you that. If you had to gamble, right? This apparently betting is the theme of the show. If you had to guess, is it more likely that these two teams get into a shootout or a shutout situation where it's like a low scoring, like 13-10?
Yeah. If you've watched the Steelers this season, they are not an exceptionally high scoring team. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've watched a decent amount of Steelers football. Like, I don't watch whole games. I'm watching on a NFL Sunday Ticket. So I've got my quad box and kind of go in between things, but their defense this is to me a defensive game. This is who's going to stop who's going to be better at stopping the opposing offense. But tell me if my memory and the statistics are aligned or not.
I mean, they're averaging 25 points a game. The only time they went under 20 was when they lost to the Seahawks. So 23, 21, 31 last week against the Bengals, which kind of ended. It was really weird to see that one go to a Hail Mary too.
That's weird.
Very nostalgic.
Yeah. I mean, the Browns was 23-9.
I think the weirdness, or maybe why, it doesn't feel like they're putting up a ton of points, is because the yardage hasn't necessarily like matched, right? Like Aaron Rodgers has yet to throw for more than 250 passing yards, which is fine. He's obviously moving the ball well, but like they've got 3 games over 100 rushing yards when they beat the Vikings. Last week against the Bengals, they had 147 rushing yards. So like the production and like the yardage totals, I don't think necessarily reflect the point total that you would expect, if that makes sense.
Was it the defense giving them favorable field position?
Their defense actually hasn't had a turnover in the last 2 weeks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because like to me, that's like, okay, well, their team is confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're low, they're bottom of the half in the league in rushing offense, but they're
putting up a ton of yardage on the ground.
Yeah, on the ground. So how does that happen? But then it's not then the defense or special teams giving them short yardage or short field position if the defense isn't causing a bunch of turnovers. Does that include turnover on downs? Like, are opposing teams trying to go for it on fourth down? I'm just trying to find like
Yeah.
where how do these statistics make sense?
Yeah. And it gets weirder, right? Like you talked about the defensive side of the ball. 19th in points against. They're allowing like 23.3 points per game. They are 31st in the league in passing and passing yards. So like Jordan Love should be able to air it out. And I think that's, that's a good place to dive into some of this. Like defensively, you can certainly find opportunities to exploit their corners, which seems weird to say because it's Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey. Like those
but
are
they're
two very good corners. Yes.
Okay, but the speed of the Packers offense may be a problem for them.
Yeah, and I think you can take the top off with the safeties for sure.
Who are their starting safeties now?
It is Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott.
And they're not turning the ball over. So
I haven't in the last couple weeks. Yeah.
I like the speed of this Packers offense against that secondary a lot.
Especially if Watson comes back.
I was going to say, I know Watson is only slightly returning, but even as a decoy, that could mean that could be big. And we know, obviously, Matthew Golden is super speedy. Interesting. I'm so excited to see how Matt game plans for this.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there are, certainly opportunities to take those deep shots that we talked about. Like, they're so close to connecting on some of these to Golden. And I think, again, if Watson comes back, like Jordan Love and Watson, it feels like they've never, because of these injuries, had like a full opportunity to build that connection. But we saw it start to get going at the end of last season, right before Watson's injury, where they were starting to time out some of these deep shots. And I think that once that same thing kind of clicks with Golden and Love like clocks that speed that he has, that is just going to open up a lot of stuff underneath. Like Tucker Kraft, I would expect to have a pretty good game. He'll have opportunities. Their interior, their middle linebackers are not incredible. Peyton Wilson, he is having an okay season. Patrick Queen, it feels weird to talk about Patrick Queen as like not the star of the show, but
so Tucker will have some middle of the field opportunities, and then ideally the Packers can hit some deep shots to score. I really would like the Packers to stop deferring if they get the opportunity and take the ball and score early and score, take I love like the Packers games that are always end the best is you get the ball to start, you get a 7-8 minute touchdown drive. And then it's like, okay, we're cooking with gas here. We've got points on the board. First, our defense now gets to play with a lead, which is when they play best. And we have already, blazed through half a quarter. It didn't like that they deferred last week against the Cardinals because I just think if you score at all 3-0, then you're just behind. You get your defense plays from behind, even though ideally, realistically a field goal is not that much, but I think it changes the way they play.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we talked about it even like going back to Mike Pettin. Like the bend don't break philosophy works when you're playing with a lead and you feel comfortable, but when you're relying on your offense to put points on the board, and I think that's kind of what's been missing from this Packers defense, right? You've got the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Micah Parsons has a career game. I think he ended up being credited with 11 pressures instead of 10, which is even more interesting. But you're generating all this pressure. And one of the things that Jeff Hafley talked about all offseason was turnovers and how they needed to be about the ball and like punching at the ball, grabbing at the ball, trying to force these opportunities for takeaways. And that hasn't necessarily come to fruition yet. They've been close. We saw a turnover last week, but like the interceptions aren't there yet. Some of these like forced fumbles aren't there yet. So I think that's kind of what's missing from this defense is you can generate a ton of pressure, but if you're playing against savvy quarterbacks who know how to beat pressure, there's still a strain on your secondary. So that would be, I think, the key to kind of righting the ship on the defensive side of the ball. And Aaron Rodgers is not the guy to do it against, right?
No, but he has thrown 5 picks, which is almost a pick a game. So it's possible. I kind of love that the Packers defense have been winning without needing to. I mean, last week aside, I think the turnover was a very like key to like changing the momentum of that game. But across the board, like at an aggregate level of this season, they haven't relied on turnovers to win. And I think that says a lot about just like the way that they play,
Yeah.
and like that base scheme. Now, like we said, turnovers are obviously great. They obviously swing games. They haven't necessarily been coming. You always say, famous for saying, turnovers come in bunches. Let's start that. But I don't. I no longer put stock in that being something that like I expect this defense to do. It
Yeah.
almost feels like a cherry on top of a game that they take away the ball.
Which I think, to your point, is better because turnovers are so volatile. And that was one of the things we talked about last season, right? Was like, can they sustain victories without the 2 or 3 turnovers that they were getting a game? Like the 7-8 game stretch that was the Xavier McKinney interception that you just like relied on. Like you took that to the bank every week, knowing that you would get an extra crack at it. And I think that, to your point about like this offense and the way that they're built to play with a lead, the defense can really get home when that offense is able to go down the field and score on the first possession. And I think Matt LaFleur calls a different game, honestly, when they are playing with a lead. So I'll be curious to see what they do. Like you said, because this is a Steelers team that I would want to play ahead with. And that's, that's like such a stupid thing to say. Like, we love playing from behind, but if there was a time to defer, I don't think the Steelers are the team to defer against.
100%. Any other keys to the game that we haven't talked about?
This one's just going to be a good one. It's such an uncommon opponent that feels so familiar because you've got Aaron Rodgers, and like we've seen DK Metcalf so many times when he was a Seahawk. The Packers played the Seahawks a ton. Like there's a lot of familiar faces for it being such an uncommon opponent that I think gives it a level of familiarity. And now it's just up to the Packers to execute. So I'm curious about like your final takeaways and your score predictions, because this feels like one of, the better teams that the Packers have seen this season. You could argue either the best or like second best, maybe behind the Lions.
Yeah.
So do the Packers play up to that? It's Sunday night under the lights, or is it tough sledding and it's kind of like a wake up call?
I've been thinking about this a lot this week. I never picked the Packers to lose, but I kind of feel like that this feels like a week that it just feels likely, not inevitable. I do see them playing up to the moment, like Sunday Night Football, right? Aaron Rodgers, the whole deal, like the atmosphere is going to be crazy. And I almost feel like this will be a game that like potentially there's a lot of things that we want the Packers to get better at, Packers to fix. That deep ball that you mentioned, right? Maybe the corners have to like level up playing against these Steelers pass catchers, where we'll be like, oh, they should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
I see it being very close, like 24-27 or 27-31, like one of those, like very, very close. Maybe it's a field goal. I don't know why. I feel like maybe they drop this one. I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like maybe a high scoring that just ends with like that gut punch field goal. Do they still have Boswell?
I think so.
No. Chris Boswell.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what are you thinking?
Honestly, I think that we've been doing this for too long, because I was going to come on here and say I hate picking the Packers to lose. I hope that I'm wrong, but I see this thing going like 27-24 Steelers. So you really just said like the entire No, and I mean like I think in the comments
We're the same brain.
We've gotten takes in the past. Like we are optimistic Packers fans, right? And part of being optimistic is seeing the avenues for this Packers team to win. And we hope we're wrong, right? Like we never want to predict a loss. But I just think like if there is one game that Aaron Rodgers is going to put on, he's going to go into the telephone booth and he's going to come out with a cape on, like this is going to be the game where all of a sudden he looks like he's 32 again. And, you can just hear like Joe Buck, does he have a vintage moment left in him? And this is like, vintage Aaron Rodgers. Like, and by that same token, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. We said for Jordan Love to have a Superman game. So like, it would be very cool to see that again. And maybe this is weird. I don't want it to end in a tie. Okay, I'm going to put that out there. I could almost see this becoming a kind of cowboy situation where both of the quarterbacks are just so hot and the offenses are both playing so well and the defenses are just gassed because, these that I
It's a
could see it being
tough
like a 40-35 kind of game, like you said, like who touches the ball last. But no, I think Steelers might take this one 27-24 just because I think there's stuff for the Packers to clean up, like a lot of self-inflicted penalties. Special teams is not going to do them any favors, right? Like I could see the Steelers getting some favorable field position to start,
yeah.
making some of their drives shorter. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, Maggie, we have the same brain. That's so crazy.
I should have said something else, honestly, to spice it up,
No,
but I
I
can't
no, I
lie.
love it. It's validating because you always make me go first, and I'm like, "What if I say something so stupid?" And she's like, "That's not what I thought at all."
I would
Um,
never say that.
okay, well, this was fun. I'm so excited for this game.
I know. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be fun to like, even though it's not going to be an objective watch, right? We're very subjectively going to be rooting for the Packers to win, but it'll be I think more interesting to go back on the rewatch, right? Like not the TV copy, but when you get to go back and look at the actual film of it, and especially knowing the outcome and like watching Aaron Rodgers one last time as closely as we do, because we talked about it before we started recording, right? Like
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers is one of the reasons that we both fell in love with football as deeply as we did, because we are young. Okay, we're gonna put that out there, right? We were born into the Brett Favre era, but we heavily adopted a Packers fandom during the Aaron Rodgers years.
yeah,
So, as exciting as it is to root for Jordan Love, and we do love him very much, it is cool to watch Aaron Rodgers play football. And
yeah,
it's probably the last time we'll get to see it as closely as we will. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Rodgers was drafted in what 2005.
mm-hmm.
I was 10. So, Rodgers to me is like that's that is the I have some Favre memories,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but Rodgers is really my childhood memory of watching football on the couch with my dad and like
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the Super Bowl win when I was 15. But um so if this is the last of it, I'm just gonna enjoy watching him play. Hopefully it's my team that ends up beating him, but certainly always enjoy watching him play football. He's one of the best to ever do it, and we're gonna now get to watch him potentially in 5 years exactly time. Don a gold jacket. He's for sure going to be a first ballot. So just a cool time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be very nostalgic, I think, for everyone involved.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good way to wrap this one up. We'll be back Monday to talk about Sunday Night Football and talk about the outcome where we hopefully are wrong but we've been wrong for most of our score predictions so far this year. So what's another week of us being wrong? You can find the show at PWSS Podcast or at Pax What She Said, Perry at Perry_Goldstein, me at Maggie J. Loney. Gonna be a fun one. Enjoy it. And hopefully the Packers come out on top. But thank you as always for listening, and go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.